decision, as you said, stands alone in terms of a position of a European country that has gone against the advice and the position of the most recent UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency assessment of conditions inside Syria of March 2021, and a recent European parliamentary resolution which said that Syria is not safe to return to. We understand that they've made this decision in the context of Damascus and rural Damascus, stating that there is not a level of generalized violence that would give rise to a claim for temporary protection inside Denmark. The position is that stability inside Syria is generally not long-lasting. It's subject to changes quite quickly. So to characterize an area as safe to return to, you would expect a level of stability and continuity. What we know and understand is that even though areas may not be subject to active conflict and airstrikes and clashes, the reasons why people left still remain, and that is fear of the regime, the security apparatus that is still very much in place, arbitrary arrests, detention, and disappearances, and of course torture and detention. We at Human Rights Watch, I have spoken to refugees that returned that experienced all of these violations. It is our assessment that the area is not safe to return to, and we stand by UNHCR's position and assessment and see this as a very dangerous precedent, particularly for a European country. I didn't give the interview and the information to the Danish Immigration Service, but I know the researchers that did, and I understand very well the information that was inputted together with other organizations. And you're talking about testimony from people and organizations that have worked extensively on conditions in Syria, and it looks like those interviews were ignored because the conclusion just does not fit with the information that was given. This country of origin information obviously is, I assume, sourced by a number of different people and agencies, but it's interesting, of course, for us that so many have indeed distanced themselves and we felt compelled to openly state this position because of the danger of what it means. People have been stripped of their residency, people are now going to be languishing in return centers and effectively living in limbo and cut off from a life that they built very fruitfully inside Denmark. Yeah, so I mean, Denmark isn't forcing people onto a plane because it does not recognize Syria as somewhere that they would forcibly deport people to. Instead, what it has is this effectively limbo situation where people are given the option to leave. And if they do not, they will be put inside these return centers and just cut off from the life they've built over maybe 5-10 years. Many of the people we understand speak Danish, are studying, are working, are contributing to Danish life. And these return centers, we understand there is an element of freedom of movement, but it is still unclear how it operates in terms of allowing people to live in a way that is dignified. And of course, this isn't a push. People are not being forced onto a plane, but they may make a decision to return if they have to choose between living in limbo or actually going back to their home countries, to their home country of Syria. That is not a freedom, to choose moment. We stand by the position of voluntary and safe returns, and putting people inside a return center, denying them the residency status which they have enjoyed for so long at a time when Syria is not returned to, just is an unacceptable position. This is, of course, the term temporary is indicative of the nature of the protection. The point is not to withdraw that temporary protection status too early, because then you are removing the essence, the reason for why it's there. You only have to really just scratch the surface of what is happening inside Syria to understand just how difficult it is to return, to build a life, to find a house that isn't destroyed with furniture stolen, a space where there are no checkpoints, the price of bread too high, electricity for 1 hour a day. One thing that that we must remember is the situation inside Syria now is also marked by extreme economic hardship. So the ability for people to reestablish themselves, actually rebuild their house, because most people will find their houses have been destroyed, or at least had their stuff stolen, is just too difficult. So yes, the Danish government has the sovereignty, has the right to withdraw temporary protection status, but it also cannot do that when conditions are not safe for people to return to. Well, we hope it won't, and obviously at Human Rights Watch we advocate for against the externalization of asylum obligations. Outsourcing asylum processes to a third country can only really be done when that country is deemed safe. We understand that there are issues around the asylum system in Rwanda. And of course, this kind of externalization does send a message that, your obligations can be sent to somewhere else. That's not how refugee law works. And we obviously advocate against the zero asylum policy that Denmark is pushing for. People talk of a European refugee crisis. That is simply not the case. You can potentially talk about that in this region where I live, in Lebanon and Jordan, and to some extent in Turkey, which has borne the brunt of the Syrian refugee influx. Europe needs to do better. Resettlement cases should be increased. Donor funding should be maintained for host governments. But to outsource and externalize its borders by potentially signing an agreement in Rwanda is again in a position that we would say is completely against the spirit and essence of refugee obligations.